Welcome to the All Things Real Estate Podcast with our very own Josh Barker. With more than 20 years of experience and over 5,000 properties sold, Josh brings a unique perspective to the real estate market. Let's get started.
Okay. Happy February, Josh.
Happy February.
We're filming this before Valentine's Day, but it's going to come out after Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
So hopefully everybody had a good Valentine's Day. And right now I drove in and it is nice and wet. So February's, I think we're going to have a good summer. But all that's kind of a segue into you and I were talking about the January numbers, and they were low.
Yeah, they were. Yeah. So this month of January, we finished at about 118 or so closings. Mm-hmm. It's probably the lowest closings that we've had. Well, it is since 2008, 9, and 10, mm-hmm. where we had like 109, 110, 115. But if you really take away the amount of houses that were on the multiple listing service last month that were out of the area, you know, where people were listing homes in LA or listing them outside of our market center completely, that wasn't very common back in 2009 and 2010. So I would say that the sales volume this last month in January was the lowest we've had in over 20 years.
That's yikes.
Yeah.
What about the numbers though? Like what about the average sales price and stuff like that? Did that dip down or?
It did dip down a little bit. So the average sales price in January was about $400,000, and a year ago, this time was about $414,000. But the median sales price bumped up a little bit. It's in the mid 380s, and it was just a little bit lower than that a year ago. So, you know, and I don't want to have anybody get too alarmed. Even though the sales volume last month in January was the lowest that it could have been, like I said, over 20 years, really, in our local area. It doesn't mean that home values or prices plummeted as a result. It just means that the participation from the consumer was pretty low on both sides of the equation, both on the buying side with the restrictions of higher interest rates. And then, of course, on the seller side, being that people are already sitting on mortgages at 3% and don't want to let that go. And so the sales volume was low.
Yeah, interest rates are really driving this one. I don't even know where they are.
Yeah.
Are they in the 7s, 6s?
Excuse me. Interest rates right now are averaging around 7%. Okay. And so, you know, last year we had a high of almost 8%, and then, you know, a low of about 6.25%. And right now it's trending right around 7%. So, you know, everybody's kind of waiting to see what happens. Federal Reserve came out recently and said that they're planning on pausing the rate cuts. But, you know, there's a lot of other economic data that's going to be, you know, have an impact on mortgage rates. But if you look at all the bigger forecasts that are out there right now, they're still saying that they think that interest rates will be averaging around 6.5% for most of 2025. Well, we haven't hit that yet. So I guess that means rates could potentially come down between now and summer.
So that's our absorption rate went up because of that, because of the low sales volume. That's the number that we're going to divide by. It tells you whether or not we're in a kind of a buyer's market or seller's market. And you were telling me before that it jumped up. We're officially in a buyer's market as of last month?
Yeah. So last year, the absorption rate averaged in the mid 3% or 3-month supply range. Mm-hmm. And as a result of that, you know, the market was kind of what we would say the tail end of a seller's market. And then last month, with our sales volume dropping so low and our inventory being in the mid 660 range, that pushed our absorption rate up to about a 5.6 month supply. But it's for 1 month, right? So yeah. I expect in February, as sales volumes pick up, we're likely to see closings that are, you know, somewhere in the mid 100s somewhere. And that'll actually take a bite out of that absorption rate. But right now it's 5.6. Technically, it's skewing towards a buyer's market.
So at the high end of the neutral market range. But you're right, the numbers can change any month. If February is a good month, it drops right back down.
It does.
March is usually a big listing month, right? I mean, it's usually when people come to market, so that can turn the tide. If a bunch of people list their home, then all of a sudden the report swings the other way. So it's
well, I think we can all agree, no matter what, that absorption rate is likely to grow this year. We expect to see that. So we think our sales volumes will remain fairly constant year over year, but our inventory will likely be a little higher this year. And that's going to cause that absorption rate to increase.
And interest rates are going to be the one that's really kind of driving the sales. People just won't be able to, if you can't get a good rate.
Right.
But there's another big contributing factor that you and I've talked about a couple of times, that it wasn't that big a deal a couple of years ago, but now it is: insurance payments.
Yeah, I think everybody now at this point is talking about insurance and the cost of insurance. And I mean, with what happened just recently with the LA fires, that's going to contribute to it even more because obviously the California Fair Plan is
Easy for you to say.
exactly. You look at that program and you think, well, it's probably fairly insolvent, without the exception, of course, that the federal government is going to bail out some of that cost. So, but it doesn't look good for insurance companies. I think overall, everybody's expecting that there's going to be rate increases as a direct result of the fires in LA.
I was hoping that maybe it would be the catalyst that would make them rethink the insurance, because we talked about before, there's not really a free market for insurance, and so it's in an attempt. The government was trying to control it, and it ran a bunch of insurance people out of the state, which then there's less providers. You know what I mean? It was like a snowball effect, and I was like, hopefully something would get them to say, hey, look, we have to look at this again. We have to fix this.
Yeah,
we have to solve this. It can't just be the government takes it on, like you said, then suddenly they're insolvent.
Right.
So
yeah, the regulatory environment for insurance isn't great, and it hasn't been great for a long time. And as a result, the participation of insurance companies in the state of California has began to diminish. And at some point, it hits a critical point where essentially access to insurance services goes away, or is really restrictive. And that's kind of where we're at right now. We have some have gone away. And those have remained. It's really cost prohibitive. So right now, everybody's feeling the price pain of insurance. And I would say that also we're probably in a process of price discovery too, because I don't think anybody really knows for sure where insurance costs could go in the future. We're hopeful that there'll be some policies that'll be put in place that'll make it easier for insurance companies. But we haven't really seen the fruit of that yet.
Yeah, I didn't know what was going to, because you and I talked about it last year when we saw the sudden spikes of insurance, and it suddenly became a factor when people were buying homes. Mm-hmm. Before it was just interest rates, price of the home. Okay, get in there. Okay, get my insurance. And then they would get these quotes. They're like, this is huge.
You're right.
I can't afford the insurance.
That's right.
I could afford the mortgage payment, but now I can't afford the insurance. It became a factor. And you had mentioned a couple of things that maybe with some deregulation, we might be able to get more insurance companies in.
Yep.
More providers means more competition from that side, and maybe we would see some better rates. I don't know, but it's definitely a factor right now.
Well, I think that they're talking about that, and I think that they're trying to create some more regulation or policy around it. Unfortunately, but I think they're recognizing the problem. The problem is very simple. There is just not enough insurance participation in the state of California, and as a result, consumers are paying a higher price tag for these services. You need more participation, and the only way you're going to do that is if you're a business-friendly environment for it. So we'll wait to see what happens, but in the short term, it's not easy, and it's having an impact. It's definitely driving buying behavior, because people that are in zones that have a higher insurance premiums, that's having an effect on their decisions to purchase out there, or more importantly, it's having an effect on what they can pay for a home out there. Because if it hits a certain amount, they just can't afford it anymore. So it's having an impact on value in relationship to insurance costs.
I don't know if this is true. If it's not true, it still sounds cool. But you've heard the thing like the Chinese word for crisis is the same word for opportunity or something like that. I'm like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But so where's in this market, who are the winners? Or is it somebody that says, hey, I've got some
infill? The winners are infill. So if you own a property within the city of Redding, within on a map, it says that the fire zone danger is low. If you've got good proximity to fire hydrants, if you've got a full-time fire department in which has access to providing protection to your home, all of these things are reducing the increase in cost to you and for insurance. And it's also having an impact on your desirability for selling, so not that you'd want to sell it more, but that if you choose to sell it, it's going to be easier to get it sold.
What about with the lower sales volumes and the interest rates? Are people sitting on certain price ranges going to actually make more? I know overall you talked about I think the median price came down a little bit, but the average sale price went up a little bit. Statistics, right?
Other way around. Average sales price went down a little bit. Median price went up a little bit.
Got it. Okay. So, but within that, there's market segments that are still, even when the stock market's down, there are stocks that go up, and vice versa. The stock market's up. So in the market, is there anybody winning in that market? Is it people like say, hey, my home probably worth $320, and you're like, no, there's not a lot of inventory. You're actually, even though interest rates are higher, you can get more for your home, or no?
No, not really. Right now, I mean, that pressure on insurance is across the board for everybody, and that pressure on interest rates is on everybody too. Excuse me. If you think about what the future is going to be for them, though, those who have lower associated costs for insurance, I think that long term, that's going to help them to sell faster if they choose to. But everybody's feeling the pressure of higher cost.
Yeah, I guess one of the other these are all the headwinds that we talked about, and the tailwind was always low inventory.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder, with you and I checked online before this, like how many structures, because I heard all kinds of numbers actually burned down in the Los Angeles fire.
Yeah, and
it was 12,000, I think, as of this morning.
Yeah, a round figure of 12,000 structures.
And I'm thinking, well, they have to move somewhere. I'm sure several will move out of the state. But I also noticed in the LA Times last week, there was an article talking about Redding. And it was talking about this cute little town that you don't know about that's got bike trails and hiking trails and all this stuff. And I thought, wow, in the midst of this, the LA Times is going to run an article like that. I wonder if there'll be some type of big push for people moving up here.
That's a really good question. I don't think it'll be a huge push. I'll give you a couple of reasons why. I've got a friend of mine that sells real estate down in Manhattan Beach. In fact, he sells homes for the Kings and the Lakers and stuff, right?
Nice.
But in any case, he told me that as soon as the fires happened, which wasn't really a huge surprise, immediately they started getting phone calls on properties that were priced similar to what they were in the Palisades. Because some of those folks had the financial provisions to be able just to buy another home right away. And that wouldn't have been everybody, obviously, but that was a small group of people. And so they started to repurchase almost immediately. And if you think about our car fire, that actually happened to us too, where there were some folks who lost their homes on the west side of town and almost immediately were able to purchase again anyway, and then work out their situation with their insurance companies, whether they were going to rebuild or just take the cash out, whatever their options were. That didn't really affect them buying another home right away. Then you have another group of people, obviously, that are going to be waiting until their lots get cleared out in LA. So, like car fire here, when they started clearing out all those lots, they just literally shipped all that debris into Anderson. And they had this huge area set aside for them to bring all the fire-related materials out to Anderson. And that wasn't a very long distance for them to do this. Well, when you think about the Palisades fire and the other fires around there, they're going to have to truck all of that out to the desert. And so that's going to be a long process. And they're going to have to burrito roll everything too, because you can't just have that stuff flowing around in the back of a truck on the freeway. And so this is going to be a very labor intensive project to clean this thing up.
Yeah.
And so that's going to take time. But where I'm going with this is that a lot of folks can't make a decision, financially speaking, until after they've got an idea of how long it's going to take for their lots to get cleared, and then to get an idea for what it's going to cost to rebuild. So one thing that people may not understand is that if you're in a neighborhood and your house is insured and your house burns down by itself, you're probably insured okay. But if you lost your whole neighborhood to a fire, well, then now there's this chance that you're actually underinsured, because the cost of labor is going to spike as a result of everybody trying to build at the same time. The cost of materials and goods and services are going to all spike as well, because there's a higher demand for it at that same time. And so a lot of these folks, unfortunately, are going to find out that they're underinsured. And so what will end up happening is that some of them will, like they did in the car fire, they'll sell their lot. They'll take the cash difference perhaps on their buyout on their home from the insurance company. And now they got to make a decision where they're going to go. And now that leaves us to this point. How many of them will likely move to somewhere like Redding, California? And this is a question we get a lot. And I don't know if anybody knows for sure, but this is what my thought is that if you unexpectedly lost your home to a fire, something that you never had thought about before, what's the probability of you moving to a fire-prone area like Shasta or Tehama County, knowing that you just lost your home to a fire? So I don't know how many of those folks are going to do that, right? Mm-hmm. Now, the exception to that, I think, is this. If you already live in LA and you have been thinking about moving to a place like Redding, California, and you already know all the good and the bad of our area, including, of course, the fire dangerous stuff, and you've lost your home to a fire, could that potentially just speed up your decision process of moving up here? And I think in those cases, yes. And that could be a concentration of people that could come as a result of that. But it's likely the same people that were maybe coming up here anyway. But just now there was this event that caused it to happen all at once.
Yeah, those are all good numbers, and there's so much conjecture and probability built into that. I was thinking of like, 1/3 of 1% is 40 families
Yeah.
out of that. And if 40 families, you said, our inventory is low. It doesn't sound like a big number, but 40 families move to Reading, it'll have an impact on our market. Our market's so small.
Oh, yeah.
That it would have an immediate impact.
No,
on the
you'd feel
market.
it. Yeah,
you
so,
feel it immediately.
So going back to your original point of there's an article that's been written in LA Times that's related to that. Whether it's related to those folks that are moving up here that lost their home to the fire or not, it's a good article to write.
Yeah.
because hey, I mean, any publicity for us in terms of where people can move to from the other places in the state, I think that's a great thing. So.
No, absolutely. And I remember that article last year. I think it was CBS put it out, and it was based off, I think maybe CoreLogic's data, saying Reading was going to be the number one, I think in 2024 for appreciation. And, so like the more that Reading shows up in these national level articles and TV and what have you, it's going to help with sales. It's going to help with tourism.
Yeah.
And that's where, I don't know how much tourism impacts our economy, but I got to think it's pretty big.
Yeah, it does. I mean, we still have that, the jewel of the North State, and still people come up here and do a lot of vacationing and outdoor things. And, you still have D.R. Horton that's building here. That's a national home builder that's still, knocking out some homes here in Shasta County.
Oh, good. And then Jeb Allen just started Palomar, right?
Yeah.
Started a subdivision.
Yeah. So Jeb Allen, the owner of Palomar Builders, he has an 18-lot subdivision over on the west side of town. It's like a private gated community, houses that are from 2,250 square feet up to 2,600 square feet.
Good size homes.
They're going to be great. It's all gated. It's beautiful. Full disclosure, we're representing them on that.
Nice.
So I really like it. When
will those come to market?
They're going to be started here in the next couple of weeks. Yeah, so everybody will start seeing them, and we expect. They're fairly exclusive just because of the number. There's 18 of them in a gated community on the west side of town. So, I think a lot of folks are going to be excited about that. But and then if you look at D.R. Horton's still doing some projects on the west side of Reading, Salt Creek right now. They're breaking some new ground on some homes over there. They're still over off of Rancho and Chestina Ranch with some projects over there as well. So. We have some new construction here in the county. It's not a huge amount, though. These builders have got their work cut out for them because, you're navigating the cost of construction, access to labor, plus you have the higher interest rate environment. It's a lot of work and very little margin for error with these builders. So, unfortunately, Jeb Allen has got a ton of experience building thousands and thousands of homes here in the county. And so, this isn't his first rodeo. He knows how to build a great product and bring it to market at a good price. So, we're excited to be working with him. I've wanted to work with him for 25 years, and finally it looks like that opportunity is presenting itself.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So are there any other major builders that you know of?
No, there's a lot of builders who have built in the past, but they're not active right now. It's and they're doing a few here or there, but nothing that it's showing up like what D.R. Horton's doing or what Palomar's starting to do.
Yeah. So our absorption rate, you said it was in the mid 5s. We kind of had a slow month, but that can turn real quick, especially if next month is a big listing month, right?
That's right.
That's when most people bring their home to market. And so new construction, we've got a couple of builders, but the numbers, no major numbers or anything like that?
Yeah. And if everybody's wondering, well, what do the tea leaves say for when this thing will really start to kick off? And I would say just watch the rates. We are really right now, the interest rate environment is kind of serving as a wet blanket to housing growth. There's people that are fatigued at this point. So we do need to see rates coming down. We do expect that they likely will. And just, for our listeners, just keep in mind that for every 1% that the interest rate goes down, it increases a buyer's purchasing power by up to 10%. So just to give you an idea how that looks, let's say you're qualified at $400,000 when the rate's 7%. Well, if the rate drops to 6%, you're now qualified for $440,000. And really, that's about all a builder really needs. That one adjustment right there would allow more builders to participate in the housing market. And and there's a lot of folks. It's going to take a while. People sitting on 3% mortgages on their homes, they're not in a huge hurry to let that go. There's reasons to let it go. One of them would be family formation. Another one would be, your family's growing. Perhaps your financial economy is changing for yourself personally, and now it's time to get into a little bit of a different home than what you've had in the past. And so there's reasons why it's going to happen, but it's going to be slower than it would have been if everybody was sitting on a 5% mortgage right now.
Do you think? I know you said earlier that 2025. I mean, all the news outlets are kind of saying like probably not going to see an interest rate lowered this year. Or I think the Fed Reserve came out and said inflation numbers were starting to spike again, and so they weren't going to lower rates.
Yeah. So, they're concerned about inflation, I think, still. But I mean, right now, if you look at most of what the experts are projecting, they're thinking rates could be averaging around 6.5% for the year. But they haven't started coming down yet. So they've got to hit 6.5 by summer in order for the whole average to be 6.5 for the year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we'll wait to see how that plays out.
Well, is there any good news for the real estate market? I mean, we got insurance interest rates. I mean,
yeah. I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, we have a lot of stubborn facts that are all happening all at once in the housing market. You have a higher interest rate environment. You have relatively low sales volume, low inventory. You've got a little bit of low construction at the moment, and fire insurance obviously is really another piece of this right now. So, collectively, it doesn't sound all that great, right? However, the silver lining in this, I suppose, is that home prices have remained stable through all of this. They're still very resilient. It kind of gives you an idea that really, as soon as one of these levers pulls in a positive direction, you could start to see the housing market start to pick up even more momentum. So, and if you get 2 of those 4 levers to pull, even faster. You get 3 of those levers to pull, faster than that yet. So, we've for the market to still be a market with home pricing being stable in spite of all the things that are happening right now, that's a pretty positive thing in itself.
Yeah, the market didn't come down. Mm-hmm. I guess that's the good way to put it. The silver lining in the glass is half full.
Yeah.
Well, what about commercial real estate? Are we seeing? Last time we talked, I think things were looking rosy locally for commercial.
Yeah, so I'm in the commercial office space still. For commercial office space, improved in good condition, is still leasing fairly quickly. With the exception, of course, of the seasonal thing of November, December, January. But for the balance of the year, we expect that it's going to continue to perform pretty well this year. The residential rental market for the long-term rental market, it was actually as tight as 2% in December. In the city of Reading, it's now climbed back up to about 5% total, which isn't too surprising going into February. But the short-term rental market, that would be your vacation rentals and things like that, it's still pretty sluggish. People that have really unique properties and great locations with high desirability, they're still being able to rent pretty well. Those night stays are going fine. But there's not as much participation in the short-term rental market as we thought. The city of Reading issued, I don't remember how many permits. This was all part of the city council thing they did a few years ago. And they said that X amount of permits would be available in the city of Reading. Well, my understanding is that they still haven't pulled them all yet. So even though they put a limit on it, that limit hasn't even been reached. Because there's just not as many.
These are the Airbnb, VRBO type stuff?
That's right. Yeah. Okay. And they set a number that's higher than where the numbers actually is right now. So a lot of folks just haven't, because of the cost of a nightly stay, what the market is right now versus what it costs to buy that piece of real estate. It hasn't really shown that it's a high demand right now.
And we've got that big project. Bethel's building that university. I don't know when the ETA is for that to be finished, but I expect that to have I think we talked about there weren't any dorms in the plan.
There's no housing provisions at all outlined for that.
And I don't know how big the school's going to be, but I've heard some huge numbers as far as how much money's going into it. And you'd think, okay, well, when that goes online, that should be a huge impact on the rental market.
Well, depending on how much student participation there is, yeah. So if they grow the count by another 500 students, I mean they're all going to need a place to stay. And if they haven't provided any dormitory provisions, which at this point they haven't, that means that our local rental market will have to absorb that. Which at this point I think we could do that.
Oh, okay. Especially it's going to be in that northeast sector of Reading, right? I think it's over there.
Yeah.
299.
Yeah, over off of 299. They've already broken ground on it and they're working on it now. And there's some multifamily that's being built in the community right now too. So a lot of the new construction that you'll see in the multifamily space right now, it's because of the lower interest rates that they were getting through these different programs. So they were, getting grants and things like that to be able to build for a lower interest rate. Financed, which allowed for them to build and add more units to the housing supply. So we're probably seeing some of our pressure relieved as well because of some of these units that are coming online right now.
So if you were thinking about selling your home, is it still a good time to go to market? Is it still, I mean, does it matter like what segment you're in or?
Well, it depends on what you're going to do. I mean, whenever somebody's thinking about selling, it's like, well, what are you going to do next, right? So are you selling to move up or move down and, improve your life situation? Then sure, why not? I don't know if there's not really a good or bad time to do it. It just matters what you're trying to accomplish by doing it. I think some folks are going to evaluate whether or not they want to have a rental property, and whether or not that's a good idea. So I mean, we probably don't have time in this conversation, but I do encourage people, if you're thinking about renting your home out and keeping it and moving into a next one, which is great, I think it's a good idea. Don't overlook the reality that there is cost associated with being a landlord.
Oh yeah.
And you have to have financial provisions set aside to cover those expenses that you're not expecting, like central heating and air systems, plumbing systems, electrical systems, roofing, things like that fail while your tenants are in there. You're going to have to resolve it. So,
yeah. Well, Josh, I'm trying not to feel like this is gloomy. Trying to hopefully you guys are, have your sugar rush left over from Valentine's Day. And, but yeah, all things are it's kind of like the weather outside. It's like a little bit gray, bud. I'd like some sunshine. So,
yeah.
Well, hopefully when we talk next, there'll be some hope on interest rates coming down a little bit. I know that would be that'd be a huge turbo on everything.
Yeah.
But that lies solely in the things that we cannot control. And so I hope we'll have good news, and hopefully something will be done about the insurance space. Maybe get some more vendors in here.
Yeah, it's going to take a little while for that one, but no, and I don't want to discourage anybody. The market is still the market. I mean, people are buying and selling still. That's not going to stop. But is there really exciting things on the forefront at the moment? No, not right now. But good things to come.
So it's not cats and dogs sleeping together, total pandemonium.
No.
Real wrath of God type stuff.
It's not happening, man.
Okay, good. Right. Well, then I guess next time we'll see each other, it'll be the Ides of March.
There we go.
Beware the Ides of March.
I'm ready.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.